Today's rock band was on top of the world in 1982 with one of the biggest #1 hits ever. They were poised to break out big time. But then their next album fizzled with no hits, and then their singer blew out his voice. In 1984, they would forge one of the biggest comebacks of the decade with a new singer who was tailor-made for their sound. They hit #1 twice, including today's massive song. They'd have another huge hit in 1986, then a top 10 hit in 87, but then they'd vanish from the charts, never to be seen again. Next up, a founding member and a key songwriter who used to be in the group tells the story of their 1985 #1 hit, and we try to solve the mystery of why this band just up and disappeared. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you remember when TV shows actually used to have theme songs that were over a minute long, you're gonna dig this channel of pure musical nostalgia.
I bet we've been together for a million years.
Make sure that you subscribe below right now so you get our interviews and videos, you know when they're coming out. Also, take a look at our Patreon. We're adding a lot of new features there, full interviews as well, and our latest merch. So this next band, we've had a few times on the show, we've had this band. They're one of my favorites of the 80s. They were on top of the world in 82. They spent 6 weeks at #1. They were an AOR rock band that at the moment looked to be the equal of Journey, Styx, Foreigner, and The Bunch, ready to take on the world. I'm talking about Survivor. Now they hit #1 with Eye of the Tiger. It was massive, of course, still one of the biggest songs ever. It'll actually pass 1 billion views on YouTube pretty soon. 82 into 83, they were everywhere, you know, with their video and mega rotation on MTV. They're even nominated for an Oscar. Their next moves would be crucial to the band's long-term success. At the moment, the band consisted of a guitarist-songwriter, Frankie Sullivan. There was keyboardist-songwriter Jim Peterik, lead singer Dave Bickler, bassist Stephen Ellis, and drummer Mark Dubray. So in 1983, the band tried to duplicate the success of Eye of the Tiger with their next album, which was called Caught in the Game. This was released in September 83. The album faltered. It actually stalled at number 82 on the top 200 album chart in the US, and the title track from the record, it peaked at a measly number 77. And then their powerhouse vocalist Dave Bickler began to suffer vocal problems. He had to undergo an operation that would get rid of vocal fold nodules, which would require a lot of rest and a lot of time, which wasn't feasible for a band that was trying to keep pace with the continuing changes in the industry and music. It was a race against time to somehow keep that momentum that they had gotten with the Eye of the Tiger. With all these trials, the door was closing. The band had to get out on the road, they had to get back in the studio, they had to remain relevant somehow. They had no choice but to look for another singer. The search was on. Enter one Jimi Jamison. He had played with the bands Target and Cobra. Jimi Jamison, I mean, he really had it all. The unparalleled voice, the chiseled good looks, the fire, the passion. He was kind of the mold for the 80s rock and pop star. Although, it's his voice that stands above it all. What made his voice so spectacular, so dazzling, was that yearning. Oh man, as a listener, Jamison could start you at this really light and peaceful solid ground where you're just mesmerized by a really palpable serenity. Then within a few seconds, he could launch you 1,000 feet into the stratosphere with fiery and passionate energy that would, rip the roof off of any arena in the world. He was the perfect voice for not only the band, for that moment, and for the 1984 album Vital Signs. Vital Signs showed off Jamison's voice perfectly in each and every song. His voice on that record, it's a revelation. He fits so perfectly into the music of Survivor, it was no surprise that 3 of the 4 singles released from the album were major hits. was one of the greatest comebacks of the decade, like I said. They're right back on radio with songs that are still played today, and much of it was due to this new voice. I can't say enough. Jimmy's voice was tailor-made for the bombastic, uplifting, and anthemic throttle of the rise up and shout songs from this amazing record. Perfect for the feel-good 80s. I mean, the first single, I Can't Hold Back, is an example. The rockin' energy of High on You. Even the album tracks, like Broken Promises. And Everlasting. They were first rate. It returned Survivor to great prominence. I mean, the album hit number 16. It sold over 1 million copies. I Can't Hold Back hit number 13 on the pop charts. It hit number 1 on the rock chart. It was followed up by High on You. It hit number 8. Then the elegant power ballad, what we're going to talk about today, The Search Is Over. That clocked in at number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100, and it was a number 1 hit on the AC charts. The Search Is Over, that was written by Frankie Sullivan and Jim Peterik, who co-wrote most of Survivor's hits. It's a song that is well known by anyone who came of age in the wondrous decade of the 80s for a couple of reasons. We'll discuss it in the interview. One's pretty funny. Speaking of which, I was really fortunate to get the story of this song and how it came together from one of the nicest guys in the industry, one of my favorite guys, Jim Peterik, formerly of Survivor. Again, he and Frankie Sullivan wrote most of the hits. He co-wrote this one. He's going to tell us how the song came about. There's actually a couple stories behind it. One of them is it's about Jim's friend, a friend that he grew up with. And this friend, he grew up with a girl that was like his playmate since they were really little. They were inseparable. The friend then searched his whole life trying to find the perfect girl when the girl he was playing with since they were little kids in the sandbox was right before his very eyes. Kind of cool there. He also tells us about Jimi Jamison's tryout for the band. Really cool story. First time that Jimmy sang this song, and about the inspired 1984 album Vital Signs. So it's a great one. As we get into this interview, I do want to thank our sponsor, Zenni Eyewear, the glasses I wear every single day. If you click on here in the info button, you can not only design your own frames at Zenni, you can also add blocks by Zenni to them. It protects your eyes against the digital blue light that we encounter every day. And also you can get the 80% off regular retail prices. Click up here to do that to get the best price. Here's Jim with the story of The Search Is Over.
How can I convince you?
Well, in 83, Caught in the Game, you released that album. It kind of flatlines a little bit. Bickler loses his voice. This is where you guys rise from the ashes with one of my favorite singers in history, Jimmy.
It's very difficult for a band to survive the changing of a lead singer. It's happened. Van Halen and
Journey
and Van Hagar and Journey. But we didn't know. And we started holding auditions and, dead ends. But I got a call from my former manager, Frank Rand. And he said, there's this group called Cobra, and their lead singer, I think they're about to break up, but their singer is really great. Send me the Cobra record. And I didn't really love the Cobra record, but I heard something in this guy's voice that sounded very interesting. We flew him into Chicago. He auditioned the day after Kevin Chalfant. We were just about to give the gig to Kevin Chalfant, who went on to form The Storm and many other great solo career. But when Jimmy came, we used to rehearse in this old carpet warehouse, and the fumes from the carpet would make us all cry. It was awful. And Jimmy comes, he's very polite, very humble. It was almost like an Elvis Presley vibe. Yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. Not that bad, but very polite and very, just great guy. And he steps up to the mic, and Frankie and I just wrote Broken Promises. And, he's singing in my ear the first one, summer and smoke, diamonds and dust, go where you will, do what you must. Goosebumps all over me.
Yeah.
Oh my God, do that on the microphone. So he nailed Broken Promises. And we had this crappy PA. He made the PA sound good. That's how loud his voice was. And I go, wow, can I show you another one? And we had just written The Search Is Over.
Oh.
So I'm playing him The Search Is Over in E flat. And he's singing it back to me. I said, dude, did you hear this song before? He goes, no, man. That's how good his ear was.
Wow.
And we get to the chorus, and we're doing it. And he goes, and now I look into your eyes. And his voice cracked on eyes. And I go, well, stop the band. Frankie, we better lower this a half step. And he looks at me and goes, oh, man, give a half a man a chance.
I love that.
I never forgot that. I said, okay, all right. So we did it again in E flat. And man, did he nail that.
Wow.
He nailed it.
I love
from
that story.
From this day on, it's in E flat.
I was living for a dream.
The Search Is Over. #1 on the AC charts, #4 on the pop charts. And that was inspired by a news story, but also by a friend that you had. I like that story.
I had a good friend who reconnected with a girlfriend that he had fallen out with, and they fell in love and they got married.
You were with me all the while.
But it's so multi-level, that song for me. And to me, it goes beyond reconnecting with a girlfriend. It means we all have a search. We're all on a search. Some of us travel the whole world over looking for happiness, fulfillment. What is my calling? What is my vocation? For me, I knew it was music from the day one. I didn't have much of a search. It was there. So many people come right back to the core and realize they had happiness right in their hometown, right where they started.
The search has come full circle.
I think that's the nugget of why that song connected with so many. Obviously, it was a very good song, and I still don't know why that modulation works into the chorus. I don't want to analyze it because it might disappear. But Jimmy's vocal, when he did the final vocal, we're all in the control room. Ron Nevison, who's Iron Man, was crying. It was just an incredible moment. So his vocal just killed it.
Taking on the world.
It was the best. Put it all together, and you got The Search Is Over.
Well, you wrote that song entirely in your head on a drive.
That's true. Which I do a lot. Because if you have an instrument in your hand, it almost limits you. And I had that tape recorder there, and I did the whole thing a cappella with la-di-da lyrics. But I got home, and I had to figure out what I had done. And I realized that modulation, I never would have found it if I was sitting at the piano.
Well, and that's got one of the best bridges of that time for a song. I love the bridge where it says, hearts lie victims of the game, then good luck it finally struck like lightning from the blue, every highway leading me back to you. I love that line, how he sings that. It's so incredible.
Highways lead me back to you. Yeah. That melody is one of my favorite melodies I've ever written. It's just so simple. In fact, I had that melody for years till I plugged it in to that. There is a God. That was the days when you could have a long bridge. Nowadays, it seems either bridges aren't there at all, or they're instrumental, or they're tiny. Well, the Beatles were the master of the 8-bar bridge.
Yeah.
And it's almost getting back to that.
It finally struck like lightning from the blue.
The part that, as a kid, that I always loved, and I would rewind and this is so cool. He swore in the song, So if you ever love me, show me that you give a damn.
Show me that you give a damn.
But I'd sing that and show it to my friends. They're like, oh, swear word.
We got it through somehow,
I know.
Yeah.
Because I can't think of a song from that year that had a swear word in it. That one did, and it was a huge song.
You couldn't say give a darn.
I know. But Burt Bacharach.
Oh, my man.
Tell us that story. What did you think about that?
Well, I had the pleasure of meeting him. He's my hero. He and Hal David, of course. Without Hal David, it would be, just music. Hal was just an absolutely brilliant lyricist. They were my role models. The Beatles and Bacharach were really my role models. And when it came to write that bridge on Search Is Over, I wanted this to be my ode to Burt Bacharach. So the original melody was far more melodic than it ended up. It was, now the roads stretch up behind me, loves that I have lost. And Jimmy learned it that way, and Frankie goes, man, it's too... So he changed it to, Now the road's not out behind.
Yeah.
We got rid of the peaks. But every time Jimmy used to leave me a message, he sang the original bridge to me because he loved the original. But, all those early Dionne Warwick songs, they were just my Bible.
And he told you that.
Then I did a show with him, and I did a medley of all my hits with a full orchestra, as did he. Then afterwards, he said, Jim, the search is over. What a song. Shook my hand. I said, now I can die.
Yeah, no kidding.
Oh, my God.
Gosh.
And I have a picture of him. And
he heard it.
That was the hugest accolade I could have ever gotten.
Oh, no question. The covers, too. Colin Ray has a great cover of it.
He does. And I did that with him at a writer's round at Tin Pan South, and he nailed it.
You can tell that he just loved that song. He's introduced it live because I've seen him live in concert saying this is one of my favorite songs from the 80s.
And that's another great singer.
You were with me all the while.
And then American Idol with Scott McIntyre. He also released it as a single. And Rock of Ages was a duet between Drew and Sherry.
Oh, that was a thrill. I've been to every opening all across the country, and it was a big thrill to have that as the big love ballad at the end.
Oh, I know.
Love was right before my eyes.
Just the last two lines. It just puts it together perfectly.
Then I touched your hand. I could hear you whisper. The search is over. That's a trick of mine, if you can call it a trick, to have the words come from someone else other than yourself. I did that on Hold On Loosely. My mind goes back to the girl I met long years ago who told me, hold on loosely, but don't let. Then you're not preaching to anybody.
I could hear you whisper.
You know, it's interesting because in 1984 into 1985, like I said, Survivor was right there with the big AOR bands of the moment like Journey and Foreigner and Styx and REO. Hit after hit after hit. But then after their number 9 hit Is This Love in 1987, they all but disappeared from the charts and they never had another hit. Yet in the 80s alone, they had 8 top 40 hits. 5 of those were top 10s, a couple of number 1 hits on different charts, actually. So what happened? Well, for one, the changing musical landscape of the 90s, that happened, which was a challenge for most bands who came of age in the 80s. But that wasn't really it. By 1987, bassist Stephen Ellis and drummer Mark Dubray were released. Then the band was put on indefinite hiatus in late 88 after their latest album, Too Hot to Sleep. It faltered. No hits came from that. Then Jimi Jamison released a solo record. He started playing Survivor songs in his set in the early 90s as he was touring. And then Jamison started billing his band Jimi Jamison Survivor. About that time, the trio of guitarist Frankie Sullivan, a multi-instrumentalist Jim Peterik, and singer Jimi Jamison would be reunited in the studio to record new stuff for a world tour. But then contract talks failed and Jimi Jamison went back on the road using the Survivor name again. Then in 1993, Peterik and Sullivan, they reunited with former Eye of the Tiger singer Dave Bickler, and they released a greatest hits album with 2 new songs. They also went on tour. I think it was a European tour. So both bands at this time were touring under the same Survivor name. And so actually Peterik and Sullivan filed a lawsuit against Jamison to stop him from, using the name. And a few years later, Peterik left the band for good. He and Frankie Sullivan had been at odds for many years. Okay, so if you're still with me here, at this point you have original singer Dave Bickler and Frankie Sullivan as the only original members of Survivor. Then original drummer and bassist Mark Dubray and Stephen Ellis rejoin. Then Ellis leaves again. Again, they went in and out of bandmates. Then Jimi Jamison, with ongoing litigation about the band name, releases a solo record called Empires under the name Jimi Jamison Survivor. Then he had to re-release it under his own name when Frankie Sullivan was given ownership by the courts of the name Survivor. And then at this point, original singer Bickler is fired. Jimmy's brought back in. Then the TV show comes out using the name Survivor, and I guess the band threatened to sue CBS for use of that name. They didn't end up doing it. Then Jimi Jamison left the band again. Then in 2013, it was reported that both singers, Dave Bickler, who sang Eye of the Tiger, and Jimi Jamison, they had reunited the current Survivor lineup together, and they were going to go out on tour. But then in 2014, Jimi Jamison passed away of a heart attack in his home at the age of 63. In 2019, original bassist Stephen Ellis passed away at the age of 69. Now Survivor tours with just one original member, guitarist and co-songwriter Frankie Sullivan. They may not have reached the same glorious heights as Journey and Foreigner, but they have at least 4 or 5 songs that will definitely stand the test of time. Just a great band.
That was just my style.
Thanks so much for watching. Leave us a comment about Survivor and this empowering power ballad. What are your memories of this song, of Survivor and their big hits? No doubt you have memories tied to this one for sure. Tell us your story. If you like our content, we do invite you to subscribe below. We'd love to have you. And also you can become an honorary patron at Patreon and check out our merch. All of this is about keeping the music alive. We love to do these interviews. We love to bring these stories to you. Till next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.